people around the world watch what we do as America. And right now, we're about to take ourselves off the map as a role model. If we let people destroy one of the most important pillars of a democracy, which is free and fair election. When our kids look back 5, 10 years from now at this moment, it will be on our watch that we either stood for and fought for our democracy or not. And I think that is all at stake right now.
That was Vice President Kamala Harris yesterday sounding the alarm again on the fight for voting rights as we head into a new year. As the Washington Post editorial board put it, 2021 was a year in which voting rights and democracy itself dwindled. It's now up to Democrats in Congress to act and save it before the midterm elections. As dire as that sounds, there's some hope on the horizon and signs that something will happen in the coming weeks. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer saying Democrats will try and change the Senate rules for voting rights should the GOP block legislation again, with President Biden agreeing to support such an exception. Jason and Claire are back. Jason, that's a huge deal. This is sort of the filibuster carve-out everyone's been waiting for. Is this sort of firm, or are you still believe it when you see it?
I'll believe it when I see it, Nicole. This is the crazy part about this. This is not some new magical thing that some archivist came running up to Chuck Schumer and said, I found it. We've known about this since Joe Biden got into office. It's been very clear. The moment that Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff got into the Senate and we had a 50-50 Senate, we have known from the parliamentarians, like all of this is known. So the idea that we're now discussing, should we have a carve-out for the filibuster, just says to me that there is not enough urgency on the part of this administration. I'm not even going to do 50-50 hindsight as to whether Build Back Better or infrastructure, first, second, third, it doesn't really matter. I don't see anything right now that suggests that Joe Manchin or Kristen Sinema or anybody else who's hiding behind them is willing to create a carve-out for voting rights. They were able to do it for the debt ceiling. They'll do it for judges. They'll do it for other things. But they do not care enough about voting rights because they do not seem to understand the threat to our democracy that we're facing. So, I'll believe it when I see it, and I don't see anything that suggests that anything is going to change anytime soon.
Claire?
I actually think that this is a smart move on Schumer's part. And I think the letter he sent's really important, what he said. And this is what I think the drum that ought to be beat over and over and over again. The state legislatures are using bare majorities to suppress votes. So what is wrong with the Senate using a bare majority to protect votes? It's just that simple. And that's what Schumer pointed out. They shouldn't stand by and let simple majorities do things that take away people's rights to vote and not answer in kind. I do think something will happen. Will it be everything we want? Will it be everything we need? That remains to be seen. But I think Schumer would not be saying he's going to have a vote if he wasn't confident that pressure would be brought to bear. And if he can get Manchin to move on some of this filibuster reform stuff, I have to think that we could get to a 51 vote with the vice president breaking the tie.
Claire, you served alongside Joe Manchin. Joe Manchin has never expressed an interest or a willingness to filibuster reform for anything. Do you think this is it? Do you think he does it for voting rights?
He has expressed an interest in some filibuster reform. He's not expressed an interest in doing away with a supermajority required to pass legislation. But there's a big difference between filibuster reform and completely doing away with the filibuster. Right. And so the question is, what will he be willing to support, and will it be enough to get the important provisions of voting rights across the finish line? I do think both he and Kristen Sinema support this legislation. So they support what's in the bill, which is a big step. And John Lewis, we even have Lisa Murkowski that is on board. So we even have a bipartisanship in one of these two bills. So I really think if they can do some reform that, it maybe won't happen. I mean, Joe has surprised me on Build Back Better, how stubborn he's gotten. And he may play true to form here and right into Mitch McConnell's hands again.
Jason, what do you think is the most sort of helpful way to frame this? I mean, we cover it every single day. The Republican fight to make it harder to vote and rig the counting of the vote in the category of nullification it's in another league. I mean, it happens all day, every day. It's messaged to and among Republicans all day, every day. Vice President's comments in that interview were very strong. The president is strong on this, but it's not a sustained campaign. What do you think the chances are that that changes?
Well, it basically has to, or they're going to lose everything. And Republicans, if they take over the House and Senate, will come up with some excuse to try to at least impeach him. But this is the thing I want everybody to understand this, because the vocabulary here gets a bit muddled. What we're talking about with voting rights legislation and John Lewis Act and everything else like that is it's not reforming the filibuster. It's not changing the filibuster. It is leaving the filibuster intact and just making a carve out, which is exactly what they just did for the debt ceiling.
Right.
That's the thing. They can't hide. Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema can't hide anymore and say, well, I support this legislation, but I want to protect the filibuster. You don't have to do anything to the filibuster. It shouldn't play a role in voting rights legislation. And that is what they're hiding behind. And that's what I think Joe Biden should be saying. And again, I've said this before, if this is a federal issue, and it is, people's federal rights are being affected, how they can vote for House, how they can vote for Senate, you should send the Department of Justice, EEOC, every single agency you can to protect people's rights. It was done in the 60s. It was done in the 60s when people's rights were being taken. Why not do it now?
Jason Johnson, Claire McCaskill, thank you both so much for spending so much time with us today. It's great to see you both. Happy New Year.